Hey,
Good morning, good afternoon, happy Wednesday. Here with another edition of Let's Build Outbound with Bastien. How you doing, man?
fine, fine. Happy to be here with you before Christmas, of course, before the holidays. But let's build Outbound with HubSpot right now. And you, Chris, how
Yeah,
are you?
no, I'm doing good. I'm excited for our conversation. I'll let you share your story in a second. But the whole idea, and I love to give meaning to the words that we're using on a daily basis, like building outbound. Um, we're going to talk about why it needs to be built, like why it needs to be designed, why it's not just get a list and start calling people. Um, right. So I won't bury the lead too much because I think your conversation that is top of mind sets the stage well, and then we can dig into, how we can help.
Yeah, but as you said, like for why do you need to design? It's more about like if you just have one or two sales and your time is big, you can of course take a list of people and just start to call everyone and so on. It's more about like, okay, you now have this kind of database where you scrapped a lot of companies. You know that 30% of your data will be outdated in 3 to 6 months. You know that people who told you they were not interested 1 month ago might be interested in 2 months. You know that you will add some sales, and the more sales you add, the more people you add, the more problem you will have in like on communication. If you go to the market, if you go to that target, to that industry, so these things will get complicated, and um, and that's why, like what we discussed with Chris and what I discussed with few people before, and it's kind of okay if you want to have everyone working towards something, you have to set an objective, clear goal. Like you want to close 30 million ARR next year, for example. But then the job of the head of sales or head of marketing working with them is to okay, how can we break down that into something uh, that are input actions, because you don't start, you don't input with error. You input with how many calls, how many meetings, how many engagement did you have, how many touch points did you have with your prospect, and so on. You have to translate that. So first part is to get your business plan, get your ARR, you put your conversion rate into like closed one deals, number of deals to open, number of meeting, number of leads, and then you have some kind of deconstructed your objective, and then you're focusing inside the first input, let's say, as you think is, for example, the number of demos. But same, like you don't call people and ask, hey, do you want to come to a demo, and they will say yes or no. Like it's so random, it doesn't work. So you have to think about input, and that's a quote I like from Jeff Bezos, is that you always focus on the input and after the output will follow. And so how do you define an input? And for me, input is something like you can do by yourself, like so the number of calls, for example, this is an input, number of contact outreach on LinkedIn, number of connections sent, these are input. And if we think a bit like, if we go back and get some higher perspective on that, it's just like, okay, these are sales engagements or what did I say before? Engagement? No. Yeah, sales engagement. Yeah.
Well, I think you're having
Uh,
like engagement is going to be a
yeah, just
keyword
engagement.
that we
Yeah,
keep
rather than
coming up with.
marketing.
Like almost
Yeah.
all the other labels are types of engagement, and um, like speak to that challenge that you mentioned of like mainly like, and it often happens this time of year, like what our teams get behind, And when it's this deconstructed, well thought out strategy, and now like you're in a position where you're not hitting your numbers, there's no way to do what you're doing now to hit the numbers. So, of course, people try to do more of the thing sometimes, or they try to start to change their strategy, or, like you're mentioning there, somebody's coming to you saying, all right, we've got to do something different. Um, and speak to that challenge, like as people come to you and ask, like, okay, we thought we had this figured out, maybe we don't. Like, how do we fill in the gaps that we're seeing, or do we just stop looking at those gaps and maybe focus somewhere else?
Yeah, so I think sometimes like you you want to like it's not working and you want to understand like what's happening. So you want to check for your input like are we doing the same thing as before? Like are we doing the same volume of calls and so on? So same volume of engagement. Um, and try to find that like you have kind of a dashboard like you see and you're not like because sometimes the people are doing this kind of dashboard and they check on weekly basis but you cannot have like a good picture of your sales of your engagement, sorry. You're just like monitoring the funnel and you're saying like hey, less companies have entered in that or we get less meetings but you don't really understand why you don't get as many meetings and so on. So maybe like number of companies to number of meeting. And so I think like having something where you're showing to your sales like okay, these are your input, these are your tasks on a daily basis. So for example like how many times you like on average how many times do you have a touchment with with your companies on your pipe. And so, for example, the goal can be three. And so, if you know that, okay, we are below, we are one, what should I do? Should I call? Maybe already called them. Should I send something on LinkedIn? Should I go see them in person? Have a lunch, for example, go on a trade event, things like that. And and I think like you need to have something like that where you see how far your salespeople are involved in the industry by engaging with not only prospect but customer or people who have churn, of people who um, get a demo with you but didn't sign with you and sign with your competitor. Because at the end, you like what we say for SaaS is technology doesn't matter, only brand. And I think like for sales, it's kind of the same thing. Skills or number of calling doesn't matter. It's network and the brand, of course, of him or her, but it's network. And so I think it's kind of engagement, sales engagement. It's kind of okay. Does your salespeople are developing their network or not? And and I
Yes.
think that's really the key. Like this is the key. I mean,
Yeah.
it's not
I
new.
mean,
Like
well, exactly. And that's where it's, generally when the pressure builds, it's like numbers, 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 numbers. The more you're focused on the numbers, the more you're not focused on building relationships
yeah,
and building network and engagement, right? And like, I think an example that has always blown my mind in that how common sense it was, but then how hard it is for people to adopt just because it's not scalable in the way that calls and emails are. And so much of this comes back to the way that we are able to track things and like letting our software decide kind of what we should be tracking or not just because we can. I remember like after Chris Walker started State of Demand Gen in 2020, And at some point that year, there was somebody who came on, and he was a salesperson responsible for targeting executives, right? The hardest, probably the hardest demographic to target and connect with in a
Mm.
meaningful way, right? He was not having any luck, and why we like when you switch it to the output or the outcome is the relationship, is the connection, is the conversation, instead of the leads, the opportunities, the number of calls, email, right? He was having no success just blind calling, like trying to share value. But then he went 15 for 15 when inviting executives into a podcast,
Mm.
right? So this concept of highlighting the other person, giving them a chance to share their value and be in the spotlight. Like, it's a completely different ask, obviously, but that's still outbound,
Yeah, sure.
right? It's still outbound. And that's where when you don't look at the behind the numbers, right? If one out of 100 calls converts, it doesn't matter if you're going to do 200 calls, 300 calls, like, versus switching into the strategy. And we see it with LinkedIn too, just because it's a lot harder to track, in most CRMs. But meanwhile, people know, like you mentioned, should I do a call? Should I send an email? Should I send a message on LinkedIn? Like, obviously audience dependent. Uh, um, but more and more so, like, we're seeing all these tools show up lever to be able to measure and track LinkedIn, because the value's been on LinkedIn for a while,
Yeah,
right?
sure.
It's the it's the biggest, most extensive sales database ever created.
Yeah, sure.
Right? And it's not locked away in Sales Navigator anymore, but I'll use that as an example. Like, my first corporate experience, the first thing I did for the team as marketing leader was get all the sales guys, all the salespeople into LinkedIn Sales Navigator, right? And I remember like 6 months later, we closed we sold something to Facebook, um, and like the Sales Navigator team, or you could see in Sales Navigator, they did a report that was like, okay, this salesperson who made the sale, like 120 interactions, with
Yeah,
Facebook or somebody at Fit, like on LinkedIn, right? And that measurement, like, that's engagement. Like, it's not always direct one-to-one conversations, right? But it's connection. It is conversation sometimes. It's that relationship. Like, there's nothing like, I guarantee it was not just him like liking 120 posts, right? Right, which is what I'm sure, like, we want to prevent people gaming the system like that, right? Like, if, like anything else, if you execute poorly and you just go and like click stuff, again, that's the difference between hitting numbers, just clicking or calling or emailing, and getting engagement,
yeah,
right? Like, and we get to personalization and stuff like that. So I, not to hog the mic here, but as I entered this ecosystem as a consultant, after being in the industrial space, knowing how hard it can be to move teams forward, they just don't go fast. They find ways to make obvious decisions, take a long time. It doesn't matter how full my pipeline is. This is where I would constantly get into uh, conversations with the HubSpot sales team, where it's like the concept of forcing, suggesting that I can force this person to make a decision within 2 months when there's no history of them ever doing that. Like, all I can do is build the pipeline and create a situation where I'm ready when they are. I cannot make them ready before they're
mm,
ready to make the decision. right? Now, sometimes that means there's a leadership change, and now all of a sudden that company's closing, right? But when the people involved and when the right, this is come back to ICPs and buyer personas, when you know what they care about and the things that will get in the way, as soon as you understand there are things that will slow things down that you have no control over, it's like don't forecast that stuff. Like try not to. Like don't depend on it at least. You know, you can build it, but uh like I
No,
think
that's
that's
impossible.
probably
You
where,
cannot forecast that. So
right?
the
And that
only
might be
thing
where
you,
companies get in trouble, right? You start to
yeah,
forecast stuff like that, and of course you're behind now because that person's never going to close that fast, right? Unless
yeah,
something happens like leadership change or some catastrophic event that like causes pain, right? Which, you know, in so many cases, it's like, yeah, we got to get lucky. We until they feel the pain, they're not making a decision. It doesn't mean the opportunity's not there anymore, right? It's just, you know, um, yeah,
I, yeah. I think like like people try to forecast and they try to make their forecast real rather
hmm
than like updating their forecast. So what I mean, like you're trying to like if you are more into macro perspective, so you get your numbers, you get the number of companies, you get your conversion rate, so you can just put an Excel and take your cell and all over to the right, and you have like copy paste, and now you have your forecast. And I
yeah,
think that one is okay to have some. Okay, are we hitting our goals with that conversion rate? Are we doing what we want to do with the number of companies, whatever you want, like meetings? Is it is it a plan that we can trust, that we are sure like okay, it's possible to have that? And then after that you try to understand like okay, how many people should I hire, what kind of tools do I need, like it's help people to switch mindset, to adapt and try to get that view real. But when you are like in 2 or 3 months and you look back to your forecast and you look at your pipeline and you say, hey, normally the average life cycle the life cycle for the deal should be like shorter, or you have that, or you have that. People like this should be the truth, the forecast, and so the reality is not the truth. So let's keep pushing. No, what you need is go back to your forecast, understand what's happening like in the past few months. Maybe I don't know, the global economy was a bit down. Maybe like you're in December. I don't know. Like you have plenty of things, and you're trying to understand. Maybe you didn't add as many companies as you wanted, or the companies you added, the quality was a bit lower. uh, and so after you have to rework the forecast. So you have to adapt the conversion rate and downgrade, you upgrade if you want, but you have to change rather than, as you said, like people should decide in less than 3 months. So you have to hassle everyone and make them decide in 3 months. No, maybe like in this time the land cycle is a bit longer, so you have to adapt. And this one means what it means: you will need to add more companies, or and also having a better nurturing process. So meaning like you have to call back people, try to have a lunch, try to better understand what they are experiencing, rather than just calling back every 2 weeks and say, hey, where are we, where are we? Sometimes I'm doing that because I'm so lazy for some things, so I have too many things to do. But if you're doing only that job and only doing that as sales, for me, you have to, yeah, bring some value and really like creating your network.
yeah.
Because
And let's touch on that, like the bringing value part. Um,
yeah, hard.
like right, digitally specifically. Um, because you know I figured out earlier this year like one of the reasons it's hard to get at least uh, in the industrial manufacturing space, like salespeople that have been doing it for a long time are used to showing up at the door, maybe bringing lunch, bringing some donuts, bringing some like they can. It's 100% within their power to show up at the door with what they see as value, right? In this case, it's lunch, it's food, it's maybe a new, um, you know, maybe it's a new part, right? That the customer didn't necessarily ask for. It's like, oh, I know you need more of these, so here's some replenishment, right? You can't do that digitally, right? Like it's to show up. I'll say you can't do it with in the same way, right? With
Yeah,
the tangible things, right? So you've got to figure out ways to do it with like digital things, which is why we talk about content creation and educational stuff. And um, so, what is that like? What are your, I guess, recommended ways to bring value, like in digital spaces?
I think what most people are doing right now is this kind like you do a LinkedIn post, for example, and you say like, hey, this is my workflow, these are the tools I use, and you're trying to have people to comment, and so you send kind of ebooks or something like that. And these one are not the same, but that's something like you're trying to find to give something, a piece of your work that is solving problems from your audiences, like people you like. For example, if I can give like I don't know an Excel of database of SaaS top 1,000 SaaS in US country, for example. These are solving problems for my ICPs, and that's something I can work on and I can share. So I think that's kind of the thing we found to have, but sometimes it's not related to your product. So for example, um, I have a friend. He's doing like he has a company of warm up for warming up emails. So he has a spam test tool, and he said to me like, "Hey, you should have something like free tool to test something, or like HubSpot with the website grader, and now they have the AI grader. But it's very linked to the business. For example, for HubLead right now, I didn't think find something right now, something similar, you know. So you can like if it's not related to business, it has to be related to the pain that your audience or ICPs are experiencing. So that they are like, oh, this guy he shared something really great that is helping me. I'm gonna follow him, and next time you will share, and next time you will speak about your product, and they say, hey, boom, that's something interesting. Um, but you cannot share like on a daily basis everything because otherwise, like you won't find anything. So I think really like in the digital space, it's hard because you have to share to for people, but you have to build a trust because if someone is going to your door and coming with a brand, for example, even if you don't really know, maybe you will be like a bit suspicious, but you will listen to the guy, woman, and like something uh, human will happen. Uh, just speaking with the body language and so on, and so you can build trust like that. But on digital space, they just see your picture, even like really small, your name, your company. They don't know you, and they see your content, and they're like, okay, just scrolling, you know. And I think like I'm like 100% sure, and I think you will agree with me. If you take the same content posted by someone really famous and the same content posted by someone not famous, the first one will be a huge success, and the other one no. So you have to do things that are interesting for your persona, for your buyer persona and so on. So you can keep them. but you have meanwhile to build the credibility to have these kind of people actually listen to your content and see that, oh, that's something interesting. Because in that space you can build whatever you want. You can have clay with an automation with like 1000 automation on a per hour, but at the end, is it really what we want? Or do you need a make, or do you need just an Excel, or do you need a CRM? It's kind of like blurry. Like everyone is building something, and you're like, yes, that sounds good, but is it really what I want, what I need, in the simplest way uh, possible? So recreating what you said with the door-to-door experience and the digital space is for me so hard. It's
Yeah.
not about only providing value, because if it was, I think more people that are providing value on daily basis should have more impression, more engagement, and so on. So it's not only about that. It's also about like who are speaking about you, what is the branding, are you
Yeah.
known, do you share things like maybe in a transparent way. Yeah, I
Yeah.
think that's something also like it
Well,
takes time.
yeah.
Like,
That's the
yeah,
thing. It takes time. You can't just show up
yeah,
in the middle. I mean, this is why people try to go viral, right? Like, and usually those results aren't what people want, anyways. But like, again, I think a different in-person context that might help is
yeah,
a trade show or an event,
and
right?
sure, yeah, yeah.
And
This one is
like
really important here.
the challenge of digital is that it's always on, right? Like when you go to an event, anybody that interacts with you there, they decided to be there, right? So they already have some control over whether or not they're going to interact with you, right? Versus if you would have just cold called all the people at the event outside of the event, like you're not going to have anywhere near the same results. But as a salesperson, you're going to the event. Maybe you should have some targeted list, at least of maybe the tables, the other vendors there that you probably want to interact with. Maybe you've set up some customer visits. Um, but you're in this agile stance where you've got some proactive things that you're trying to do. But the whole point of a booth is to be ready for conversations about your value, right? And that's inbound, right? And if you're not at the event, you will not have those conversations,
No, yeah, sure.
right? So what you're describing, it's hard because we have to be in it as much as possible to be ready for that somebody to comment on a post and then you be able to respond, yep, here's some content, here's some value, right? Related to your thing that you're sharing right now. And if I wasn't here to see that, I would not have that opportunity. If I tried to send it to you before you shared that, like
Yeah,
the chances that you pay attention, right? So that, like, that's what's been, I love to talk about that aspect of content marketing. Like people say it has to take forever, 6 to 12 months to work or whatever, right? It can start impacting the sales process almost immediately when it is a piece of content that answers a specific challenge or question. And that's the next person you're talking to on LinkedIn, right?
yeah, mm, and what's really surprising also is that I think that's the difference between not even like a good sales, best salesperson, a great salesperson, and the bad one. It's more about like people in general, in marketing, whatever you want. It's how far are you interested in your industry slash product slash pain only, really the pain you're solving, because plenty of ideas from my content is just coming from I'm speaking with clients, I'm speaking with users, I'm speaking with partners and so on. And so I'm like, oh, and sometimes when I'm speaking to someone, I'm like, I remember someone did that to solve your problem. I'm not sure if it works, but I know that I was speaking with that guy, don't need to mention, and you say they had this kind of problem and here what they did. Maybe you can try. And here, even if I didn't do it myself, even if I don't know really what I'm like for this kind of problems because it's not related to my product, I just shared something like from someone else, and you're already bringing some value because
Yes.
maybe that guy you're sharing the advice has already think about that, and for sure I think he already have thought about that, and he's like, oh, so that's not really stupid what I thought, so maybe I can double check, and maybe it won't work, but at the end it will be experience. He will have some new thoughts about that. And so I'm sure, like sales people, when they are doing their sales calls, they just need to be a bit more curious about the industry, the persona, and so on. Just ask question, and for your next call, maybe you will think about, oh, you get this pain. Oh, of course, I know this customer. He has this pain. If you want, I can put you in touch if you're okay. You're not competitor, for example. So, and you're already providing value, and the value is not created by you, so you can have like a lot of values at the
Right.
end because you're not the only one to create that, so it's not linked to your hours of work, it's more linked to people you're speaking with.
Yeah. No, it's keep on coming back to this word value, man. Like, and I feel like I'm starting to see it more. Maybe it's just my RAS triggering because I'm thinking about that word, but seeing more posts, I feel like that's like people are starting to understand this on some level. Like, if you show up with no value, like, just don't do the thing, right?
Yeah,
And
I
just,
mean, yeah, I think you're right. I mean, my guess is, I mean, some people like Adam Robinson said it a bit also. It's kind of with AI, basics will be simple enough to do. The average will be really simple to beat. So you have to bring something new. And right now, I don't know if later it will be possible, but right now, AI is not able to bring something new because how do you bring something new? You have to try things, you have to experience things, you have to think like I love AI, but when you speak with AI, like most of you said like 10 minutes ago, he already forget it. So I think right now, and maybe in 3, 4 years, it will be different, but right now, you have a window where you can shine really easily by providing more values than the AI. That is really not complicated. And you need to have something to differentiate with AI for companies, but also for employees. And so that's why maybe people are more into how to add value, because the basics is not now, but in 1 year, maybe two, it will be so easy. Like you have this kind of AI calling people massively. If you try to compete with that, it's impossible. You have to compete differently. That's by providing value.
yeah, yeah. And that's where like that it comes from engagement and it doesn't have to be, you don't have to actually create. I love the way you, like, there's lots of ways to define value, right? And again, we come back to last week where it's like understand your ICP, your buyer persona, any challenge that you can help with, any challenge, like whether it's sharing a piece of content, giving one sentence worth of advice, or just asking the right question, right, to confirm. Um, they could change their mind completely, uh, or they could be sorry for all the background noise.
No, don't worry.
Um, uh, or they could be, oh yeah, so this is definitely my problem. It is, I'm confident, even though it's common sense. Like I love being in that position where all I have to do is help people say, like, yes, the common sense thing is the right way to go. Like, don't overthink it. That
Yeah.
happens with HubSpot all the time. Um, but as an example, like the AI, like in this level of engagement, and I think you alluded to it, like you got to care, like to reach this level of engagement, you've got to care about the solutions that or the problems that you're solving, the people that you're solving them for. Um, like, because this is what happens when you try to throw AI at this. And if you do care, it's very easy to stand out, in my opinion, against the backdrop of AI. I think it's harder to do it in an email just because it's not an engaging channel, right?
Yeah.
Like, it's so hard to start conversations there. But when I
Yeah.
see, like, so I've got this message and I know AI is happening. I try to give people the benefit of the doubt, but there are things that you can see. It's like, okay, I'm not engaging with anyone right now. I'm trying to engage, but like, so I got this on Friday, and whenever anybody connects with me, um, I say like, what brought you here today, right? Because I do a lot of content, and I want to understand like in a non-pushy way. I don't KPIs to hit, right? I just like, hey, like why what's on your mind today basically. It's, hey Chris, I'm really impressed by your work with HubSpot membership and AI skills. I'm all about CRM and RevOps too. Let's connect and exchange insights. Looking forward to sharing ideas. uh, and I think this is like an evolution. Like there was a time where you could get away with let's exchange insights, let's share ideas,
Yeah.
right? But there's got to be meat behind it. I got to be, to your point, I got to be able to go look at your profile and not see that you're selling some tool to help me get leads, because that's clearly where this conversation, like credibility needs to be there,
Yeah.
trust, right? So I didn't respond right away. uh Comes back on Monday. Thanks for connecting again. With your knack for CRM and AI, do you hit any snags with online visibility? uh and so now I'm like, okay, not really. I meant to respond on Friday, sorry for the delay. Anything specific that was impressive about HubSpot membership and AI? Uh, and at this point, I'm understanding that I've done some recent episodes about that stuff specifically,
Okay.
right? Like, and I'm impressed that the tool can do this, but it's still, I know that it's a tool because I don't answer the key question that it needs, right? Which is the visibility question,
Hmm.
right? So it's almost like a politician giving the answer that they want to give. So I asked,
Yes.
oh, anything specific that was impressive? Uh, he says, I was impressed by how you create secure, personalized experiences using HubSpot's native features, right? Like plucked right out of a title of a post, right?
Okay. Damn.
And
Oh,
then
no,
we're back. Given your CRM expertise, do you find any challenges in expanding visibility to even more clients,
yeah. It's not
right?
not human, right?
We're not engaging, right?
Yeah.
And even if I don't know that, because that's, like I said, it's pretty powerful that AI can dig into my posts and find some relevance, but it's still out of context enough for me to say, okay, if a human would be able to switch gears and answer my question, and not most of them would, but this is where we come back to the original point. How often do people at numbers like just cloud the judgment and say, I gotta ask this question over and over. Like you gotta go through my process. I don't care about your buying process. I need the answer to this question so that we can move on to the next question in the playbook, or so that I can qualify you or disqualify you. So I'm not even hearing what you're saying. I just like, do you need more visibility? And
Yeah, I
it's
see
like,
what you
oh,
mean.
if you look at anything I'm doing, not one of my challenges right now, sir. Like,
Yeah, I
uh,
mean, like, it's really complicated. I don't know. Maybe we will, in 2 years, go back to this recording and say, hey, Chris, hey, Bastien, you were wrong. But I think, like, people will be trained into recognizing AI. Maybe for videos, it will be harder. I don't know. We do. But the more I'm doing AI, the more when I see some content on crafted with AI, I'm just recognizing it. And I think what's something you touch, and actually I did the test with a live sales call from AI. So calling me, asking me something, and I said like, "What's your price?" And he said he was just repeating the question before, like saying something casually, like, and after repeating the question. So I was like, okay, for cold calling, it won't work. Maybe for customer support, maybe for basic things, of course, but you don't need really AI. Like, I called my bank for something and I had a voiceover, and don't need AI for that. Just ask me a question, I answer, and that's all.
Yeah.
So I think the point you're doing, what you're saying, like, it will be hard for them to handle um, objections and to create a real conversation. And maybe one day they will be able to create conversation. But so at the end, it will be a bit the same as any sales or doing massive things. At the end, maybe at the beginning, it will be a good competitive advantage, but everyone will do that. So we will back at the same thing like 10 years ago. And we were back to saying the same things, that you need to build the brand, you need to build the trust, you need to engage with people in person, digitally, you need to have people have trust in you. And whatever tech you have, AI, whatever you want, you will just need that. And so the sooner salespeople is doing that for me, the better it will be in any position, any industry, any company. So he will be rich, of course. He will be his life will be like easy because he has built his network. And today, like before, network and brand, personal brand, is the most valuable thing in the world, because you can be Gary Vaynerchuk. You say, "Hey, I'm launching this SaaS." Boom! He's making, I'm sure, 100K MRR in 1 week.
Yeah.
And you do the same SaaS. You post on LinkedIn, and boom, you're doing zero MRR in 1 week.
I get a message from LinkedIn saying, "Hey, 85 impressions. This is how you can get more impressions." No, that's
Yeah,
right on the money. And then that's when we get back to audience, right? And audience is
yeah.
just another way to say, like network and expanded network and um and the people with the biggest audiences are generally providing some kind of value just
No,
on a daily
because
basis, right?
they just need to show themselves. And since they are reaching like a bunch, like a really great market, you're just reaching, what you're interested is to reach the one who have no skills, no information inside the pain they are trying to solve. So you don't care about the others. But when you're beginning, you're starting with the early adopters, with the innovators, and those one know things. So you have to provide value to that one. Then you can go to the early majority, and then you can go to the late majority, because the late majority won't trust you if those innovators or the early adopters didn't trust you first. So you have to do like that. Yes, I'm
Yeah,
on the in the crossing the scam chasm book. So
right. Well, no, that's the thing. Like, either at any size, you have to know your audience. And like, well, Gary can probably make just about anything. Like his strategy, like it's very unlikely that he's going to create something and try to sell it that's not valuable to somebody
yeah,
like
sure.
in his audience, right? And that's where we talk about like influencers and the reason that influencers from entertainment can't just sell your B2B product is because they're creating a very different kind of value for their audience that your product does not bring. So yeah, you're not selling it. Like you can't just transfer value states like that, right? I trust you to be funny, or to be entertaining. Uh, like that has nothing to do with this other message that I'm all of a sudden, getting from you. And it doesn't hurt it most time doesn't hurt the influencer at all. It hurts the brand that's trying to like usurp that value. So whether it's 100,000, a million, like it grows because you're bringing value, right? That the value will likely change over time. Not always, but it's about how am I interacting with this group of people. And that's where when you're doing outbound, and it's hard to give advice like this when I know people are just up against it with quotas and calls and emails. Like if you
Mm.
could have a conversation like with yourself, if you're the guy responsible for building lists and prospecting and creating pipe, um, or a sales manager with your team, how is this outbound activity building trust? Like, and that's where execution and the type of activity matters. Because if it's a cold call, at least half the human population probably doesn't trust you already, even if they pick up the phone. Because they like it's not people, a lot of people do not want to be reached that way. There are still plenty of people that do. Again, like field field manufacturing situations, that's the only way to reach people. And they appreciate when you've done the work, right? To reach them in those situations where that's the only way you're getting to them. Um, but that's where the execution matters in like 100 calls versus 10 LinkedIn messages. If you're in SaaS, like it's hard not to say like when it doesn't happen like this AI conversation I just mentioned, right? When you're showing up and like doing a video or an audio clip or just saying something that's like, yep, I'm a human being. I see you today. I hear you today. Here's something that, might be useful. Or this is a like don't overthink it. If LinkedIn is about networking and learning, in my opinion, people are there to do those things. So just joining another network, adding another network to somebody can be value, right? Um, and that's where like the connection outreach, like, is that a better trust building outbound activity than the cold call or than the cold email, right? Just starting to think about it through that lens of are we building trust with this activity? Because if we're not, like if we're honest with ourselves and we're not building trust through that activity, of course the pipelines aren't going to hit. Like, why would we
Yeah.
expect to hit those numbers if we're doing a bunch of stuff that does not create trust?
Yeah. At the end, you won't develop your brand, so your inbound and whatever you want. So I think that's a good sentence to finish.
Yes. Yes. If you're not creating trust, what the hell are you doing?
Even in
Outbound,
outbound.
inbound, right?
Yeah.
Wherever on your website, how you show up, um, it's gonna come back. Like maybe you get some
Yeah, you need
hits,
to pray.
but it will come back. And just if you can create trust with all your activities, surprise, that's a good thing, and it's gonna help you hit your goals. So I'd say if you're struggling with pipeline and KPIs and quotas and all this stuff, just take a step back and maybe ask that question to you and your team and just have an honest conversation about it. The tools are there to help you achieve trust in ways that you might not be doing now. So just take a step back, and like this really like build some outbound. This is what we're talking about. Build it,
Yeah.
right? Not just execute it, not just throw lists at people. Um, this has been fun, man. I enjoy talking to you on Wednesdays. Uh, we will be taking a break, for the holiday. Um, so we hope this was helpful. And if we don't see you, have a happy holiday, and we'll see him in
Happy holidays,
2025,
guys.
Bastien.
Yes, you in 2025.
All right. Have a great day, everybody.
Bye.
Thanks for going a little long today.